This is Richard Wolff from Democracy at Work, responding to another Ask Prof. Wolff question from one of the supporters of this program, and her name is Carol. And Carol asks me a question about, quote, woke economics. She wants to kind of know, what does it mean? She suspects it has to do with a kind of a put down, or perhaps a kind of label that is new in its wording, but actually an old idea. And I'm going to respond by telling her it's kind of all of the things. So I'm going to answer on two levels. First, I'm going to talk about woke economics as a kind of term similar to the following other kinds of economics: compassionate economics, cooperative economics, shareholder economics, stakeholder economics. I could go on, there are more of them. And they all have something in common. That is the idea that there are different kinds of capitalism separated by these different adjectives, like woke, and more or less meaning a capitalism that doesn't have certain classical flaws of capitalism, like its instability, its cycles, or like the inequality that it everywhere breeds, and so on. A kind of capitalism that has been, and this is the key word from history, reformed, a better capitalism, a capitalism that has cleaned up its act, it's woke, it's better. And I've never liked this kind of talk because what it seems to do is to suggest, and many of the people who advocate it, not all, but many, prove this when they talk about it, that they believe that capitalism has flaws which can be fixed, like the instability and the poverty and so on. And I don't, so I disagree with it. I think the key problems of capitalism are precisely built in to that system and not the kind of thing you can change with a reform or a law or a regulation. And I want to get that point across, so I'm not in general terribly sympathetic to when people say that. I'm going to give you an example. One of the woke capitalism synonyms is stakeholder capitalism. And here's what that means. And in fact, some people who use the word woke mean what I'm about to say. It's a capitalism that says it's not just the capitalist who has a stake in the system, it's also the worker, it's also the customer, it's also the consumer, it's also the government, it's also the community in which the enterprise is functioning. All of those people have a stake in how that capitalist enterprise works. And then the argument is we ought to make the running and the decision making of the enterprise responsive to the will and the desires and the feelings of all the stakeholders. I understand the positive impulse there. It is awful that something as socially embedded as a capitalist enterprise is in the decision making hands of a really tiny group of the affected people. Democracy means if you're affected, you get to participate. We're all affected by what enterprises do, but those of us affected are not entitled to participate in the decisions that run an enterprise, because capitalism and democracy don't go that well together if you think about it. But here's what I don't like: the word stakeholder doesn't get at the problem. And the way to illustrate it is to use the example of slavery. Suppose someone said they were in favor of a stakeholder slavery, the parallel to a stakeholder capitalism. And they would explain that the decisions of the slave plantation should be made, yeah, by the plantation owner, the master, but also by the slaves, because they have a stake in what the decisions are. My response is no, 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 no. My opposition to slavery is not that the slaves don't have a stake, and it's not that the slaves don't have a say. It's that they're slaves. That's the problem. I don't want slavery. My objection is to slavery. And the same with capitalism. My objection is to have a tiny group of people sitting at the top of every enterprise, the owner, the board of directors, whatever, making all the key decisions, taking all the profits everybody helped to produce and deciding all by themselves, unaccountable to everybody else, what they're going to do. That situation is impossible. That's an unacceptable arrangement. Yeah, everybody has a stake, but the relationship is what's wrong, not the degree of stake holding that everybody has. I want a democratic community to run the enterprise. I want stakeholders to have that role, not the role they would have if some of them were capitalists and others were employees. Then there's another meaning to woke, less important, but I thought, that I would mention it. And there the idea is to put it down. It's the way Florida Governor DeSantis uses woke, sort of Republican wingers, who don't want to take any of that seriously, who are engaged in what they love to call culture wars. Is there a woke capitalism that way? Yeah, and you know what right wingers usually mean by this? A capitalism that they think is on the way to being bad, maybe even socialism. It's woke in the sense of it's making reforms. They don't want reforms. They want capitalism in its good old fundamentalist way. It's the kind of fundamentalist economics that is the parallel of fundamentalist religion. They don't want capitalism with any reforms, with any soft edges. They want the good old harsh, I'm in charge capitalist. You're an employee. You're like a machine or a mule. I use you when it's profitable. I get rid of you when I don't. That notion that woke capitalism is a little softer, you find that also in the hands of conservatives who want to rally support for the good old capitalism before anybody reformed it. If conversations like these strike you as useful, please consider being a partner with us. Share it. Show it to friends, neighbors, coworkers. It's a way of extending the reach of what we are doing. And if you're interested in our production of these sorts of videos and many other activities, radio, television, media productions of all kinds, book publishing, take a look at our website, democracyatwork.info. Sign up for our email list and you'll be informed of everything that we do. And of course, if you can help us financially with a donation to cover the costs of all of this, that will be appreciated as well. Thank you.